I never thought a Monday morning could feel like a punch in the gut, but there I was, staring at my laptop screen in disbelief. Silicon Valley, 2024. My home, my battlefield, the place I thought I had built my dreams. I was Vesper Calloway, 30 years old, co-founder of Lumen VR, a VR startup that had just started turning heads in the tech world. And yet, in that sterile, glass-walled office, I felt smaller than I had ever felt in my life. I had come in early, as usual. I liked the quiet mornings before the chaos of emails, investors, and endless pitch decks. My coffee steamed beside me, the faint hum of the air conditioning filling the space, when I noticed the first red flag, a transfer notification from our company account. An amount far larger than any legitimate expense, wired to an offshore account. I blinked. No, that couldn't be right. Vesper, you're here early, said Alex, my co-founder. He leaned casually against the doorway, sipping his espresso, the picture of nonchalance. He always had this effortless charm, like the universe owed him everything. But today something in his smirk made my stomach twist. What's this? I asked, pointing to the transfer notification on my screen. Alex raised an eyebrow. Oh, that? That's, just some reallocations we had to make. You wouldn't understand the nuances. My pulse spiked. Reallocations? Alex, that's... I stopped, my mind racing. The numbers didn't lie. Someone had siphoned hundreds of thousands of dollars from Lumen VR, and if the bank logs were correct, it was him. His eyes met mine, and I saw it. Calculated calm, the kind only a liar could master. Vesper, don't panic. It's just numbers on a screen. I'll handle it. But I did panic. My hands shook as I scrolled through the transactions, each one a dagger in my chest. Wire after wire, all traced to shell accounts under his name. And the worst part? The way he casually tried to pin it on me. Internal memos, altered logs, subtle manipulations that painted me as reckless, incompetent, even greedy. I felt like I'd been punched, dragged through fire, and then left in the cold. Rage bubbled beneath the surface, but so did shock. Betrayal. How could I have been so blind? I trusted him. I had shared everything. Ideas, strategies, sleepless nights. And he had weaponized that trust against me. I remember pacing the office, the city skyline bleeding through the floor-to-ceiling windows. The sun glinted off the glass, a cruel reminder of the world continuing, oblivious to my unraveling life. My inner monologue was a storm. I can't let this end like this. I won't. I opened our internal chat logs, looking for anything that could absolve me, anything that could confirm I wasn't the one who emptied our accounts. And then I saw it. A brief lapse in his usually meticulous records. A timestamp out of sync. A line of code that hadn't been overwritten. A breadcrumb. I felt a flicker of hope, quickly swallowed by fear. He was clever, meticulous, everywhere I looked. But maybe, just maybe, there was a crack in his armor. I sat back, staring at the screen, mind spinning, heart hammering. I knew something had to change. I couldn't just hand over Lumen VR and let him rewrite history. And yet, I had no plan. No allies I could trust entirely. Just the growing fire in my chest and the knowledge that the man I once called a partner had betrayed me in the deepest way possible. The office phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number flashed on the screen. "We know what you're up to. Stop digging." I froze. My hands hovered over the keyboard. My pulse raced. Whoever sent this knew more than I was comfortable admitting. And if Alex had eyes and ears everywhere, then my next move would have to be calculated. Surgical. Deadly. I whispered to myself, "They think they can scare me. They have no idea." And with that, I knew I couldn't go back to the old me, the naive, trusting Vesper Calloway. Something had broken inside me. Something sharp and relentless, something that would not rest until justice or revenge was mine. After the phone buzzed with that anonymous threat, I stopped pretending I could stay calm. The office felt smaller, walls closing like a courtroom. I needed allies, and I needed proof. Ironclad proof that couldn't be erased by charm or forged memos. First, I reached out to people I trusted the least with the most. Data. If Alex had moved money, there would be fingerprints, timestamps, API calls, routing headers, server logs. My fingers danced over my keyboard as I pulled every audit trail I could access. I copied transaction histories and matched them to code commits, to deploy logs, to who touched which VM and when. The more I pulled, the more the picture sharpened into something ugly and methodical. I also called Maya Ortiz. Maya was our CTO. Brilliant, blunt, and allergic to office politics. She'd been with Lumen VR longer than Alex. We'd fought and laughed our way through broken builds and midnight launches. If anyone could parse the mess Alex had made, it was her. She met me in the server room at midnight, fluorescent hum and the smell of dust and electricity hanging between us. "Show me," she said, no preamble. Her eyes skimmed the logs and her jaw tightened. "He's good," she said finally. "Cleaner than I thought, but not perfect." Together we started triangulating. Where a human eye saw chaos, a coder saw patterns, reused IP addresses, an unusual cron job that triggered transfers, a failure to rotate keys properly. Whoever set this up had relied on speed and the assumption that chaos would hide intent. "Can we reverse it?" I asked. Maya looked at me like I'd asked whether I wanted coffee. "We can prove it, but proving it won't be enough if he controls narratives. He can still run to investors, tell them he found a leak, and paint you as incompetent. The legal team will need more than logs." Legal. The word came like a cold splash of water. I scheduled a meeting with our counsel, an outside attorney named Helen who'd helped us during incorporation. She listened, fingers steepled, eyes unreadable. "You need both evidence and theater," she said. "Digital forensics for the record and a controlled public narrative to neutralize his story. But this will cost money, and right now the bank is frozen." "How do you pay for either?" We had a problem. The theft had already rattled our runway. Investors were jittery. The board called emergency sessions. Alex performed in those meetings with practiced warmth, asking questions that sounded concerned and helpful. He looked like the man who would save the company. It nauseated me. I set up a burner account and reached out to Jonah. Jonah was a gray hat friend from grad school, brilliant at finding things most people thought were gone. He owed me favors, the kind that accumulate over bad pizza and all-night debugging sessions. I wasn't proud of asking him to dig. I was desperate. He agreed to look, with two conditions: no illegal intrusions and no reckless exposure. "Smart, not loud," he said. "We're building a foundation, not burning the house." Jonah's first finds were tiny. A forgotten IAM policy here, a pivoted SSH key there. Each discovery was a match, and matches build into proof. But nothing worth taking to a judge or an investor is neat. Alex had covered his tracks. He had staged minor errors, created decoy transfers to offshore accounts that pointed back to shell companies that looked plausibly legitimate. He'd exploited the trust architecture of the company, who held keys, who had sudo, who approved wire transfers, and he'd done one thing I could never forgive. He'd started leaking whispers, that I'd been reckless with funds, that my grand designs had left us exposed. A smear campaign in drips and drops. An anonymous tip to a tech reporter. An offhand comment to a board member. By the time anyone looked at the actual logs, the social soil had already been tilled against me. The pressure mounted. Investors demanded answers. The bank froze accounts. Employees whispered in hallways. People I'd mentored stared at me with new caution. I felt naked. So we built a plan that had 3 limbs: forensic proof, A public narrative that cut the oxygen from Alex's lies, and a clean legal pathway to force an audit without alerting him. Each limb needed precision and timing. Miss one beat, and the whole thing collapsed. We staged a fake compliance audit. It was risky. I arranged for a low-profile external audit firm, one with teeth but not a megaphone, to come in with the pretext of routine checks. Helen wrote the request in neutral language. Maya and I cooked up the exact artifacts the auditors would want: chain of custody logs, immutable snapshots, versioned backups. Jonah set traps in the network, silent watchers that would log any attempted scrub or tampering in real time and replicate to an off-site location. If Alex tried to touch anything once auditors arrived, we'd have him caught in the act. On the morning of the audit, I walked into the office feeling like I'd swallowed a fist. Alex greeted me with a smile like a shark. "Morning, Vesper. Big day, huh?" he said. His voice slid like oil. "Big day," I echoed. The auditors arrived. People did what they always do when someone official walks in: straighten chairs, rehearse lines. Alex flitted from group to group, laying charm like a blanket. He even pulled me aside to say, "We'll get through this. Let me handle it with them." I wanted to slap him. Hours bled. The auditors dug. They asked questions I'd never thought to answer out loud. Maya answered with short, technical sentences. Jonah fed me alerts on my burner. At first, the audit felt slow and bureaucratic. Then, one alert came in, and the world contracted. Someone had tried to modify a backup, an automated script that would have scrubbed a critical snapshot, just as auditors were requesting copies. The IP resolved to Alex's personal VPN. My stomach dropped. Maya's face drained of color. "Did he just—" she whispered. We watched the logs spool like a heart monitor. The attempted scrub matched a window of time where Alex had had physical access to the admin console. It wasn't definitive. It was damning. Alex, sensing the tide, changed tactics. He smiled wider, volunteered to help with the audit, and arranged a private meeting with me under the pretense of protecting the company. I went because I had to know what he would do next. He closed the door, and for a second, the old partnership flickered between us. Late-night debugging, silly inside jokes, the first pitch deck we'd made with a crude logo. "You're being hysterical," he said quietly. "People get paranoid about money. You're making things worse." His tone slipped, patronizing, almost tender, and I felt the old knot of trust twist into anger. "You touched backups," I said. He looked at me like I'd invented the accusation. "Vesper, if you have something, you should go to Helen. Don't make scenes." But I wasn't going to Helen yet. Not until I was sure my net was tight. When I left that room, Jonah's latest alert pinged. A file I'd never seen before, stored on a device we thought retired. It contained a signed transfer request, Alex's signature, approved at 3 a.m. I stared at the timestamp like it had burned me. And then my phone buzzed with another message from an unknown number. "Stop, or your proof ends up in the wrong hands." It wasn't just Alex now. Someone else knew we were watching. The air tasted metallic. I realized in that compressed moment that I'd traded naive confidence for a war where friends could be liabilities and allies could be targets. The map had widened. Whoever was warning me wanted me to stop, but they also revealed something I hadn't expected. They cared enough to threaten me rather than just let the company implode. I made a choice. If the night before had taught me anything, it was this. I couldn't win with only tech. I needed the kind of exposure that cut through stalls and charm, something theatrical, public, undeniable. I started drafting what would become our bait. Not evidence alone, but a staged moment where Alex would be forced to explain himself in front of people who couldn't be bought out of disbelief. Investors, journalists, the board. But I also began to feel the shape of the other shoe. Someone close to me leaving breadcrumbs that looked too neat. A signature here, a timestamp there. Maya's name, attached to a comment in a commit I couldn't reconcile. When I opened that commit, my throat closed. It wasn't Alex's VPN this time. It was Maya's machine, logged in at 3:02 a.m. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. She had always been blunt and fiercely loyal. She'd sworn on her code she would never betray me. But the log said otherwise. And if Maya had touched anything, then the narrative I'd been building, us versus him, wasn't going to be that simple. The room tilted. I set my jaw and leaned back. I had to decide whether this was the end or a deeper beginning. When I woke up the next morning, I had two choices: pretend everything was fine, or burn down the lie from the inside. I chose the fire. I showed up at the office early, earlier than anyone else. The air still smelled like burnt coffee and ozone from the endless computers humming in sleep mode. My desk light flickered once as I sat down, almost like it was warning me. Don't go too deep, Vesper. Too late. I logged in using a backup admin credential I'd created months ago. A habit I'd developed back when Kai and I were still equals, back before he started keeping secrets. The code repository was a jungle of updates, pull requests, and hidden branches. I dove in, my fingers flying across the keyboard. There it was. A trail of financial records hidden inside a shell directory labeled VRENV test. Cute. At first glance, it looked like test data. But I recognized the formatting. It was our real financial system. Except, the numbers didn't add up. Funds marked as hardware acquisition had been rerouted through ghost vendors. And the signatures? Digital copies of mine. Perfectly forged. Unbelievable, I whispered. My voice cracked between disbelief and fury. Every transaction told the same story. Money stolen, my name used, Kai clean on paper. I felt my chest tighten. Betrayal doesn't feel like a stab. It's more like a slow freeze from the inside out. You don't scream, you just stop breathing for a second. I sat there, staring at the screen, when the door opened behind me. Early bird, huh? Kai's voice. I spun around, heart in my throat. He leaned casually against the doorway, coffee in hand, wearing that smug grin that once made him look confident. Now it just made me sick. Yeah, I said flatly. Couldn't sleep? He smiled wider. Still stressing about that audit? Don't worry, Ves. I'll handle it. Vez. The way he said it. So casually. Like we were still friends. Like he hadn't just set me up to take the fall for his theft. I forced a small laugh. Right. Thanks, partner. He raised his cup in mock salute. That's what I'm here for. When he left, I finally exhaled. My fingers trembled over the keyboard. Now I had proof. But raw data wasn't enough. If I went to the board now, Kai would spin it like he always did. He'd say I'd tampered with files, or fabricated evidence. I needed something irrefutable. Something live. That's when it hit me. The investor pitch. Next month, Kai and I were supposed to present Etherlink 2.0, our new VR platform, to the top-tier investors from Red Mountain Capital. The whole event would be live-streamed. If I could embed the proof, the financial records, the signatures, everything, into the demo's back-end and trigger it at the right moment. Kai wouldn't just lose investors, he'd lose everything. But there was one problem. Someone was watching me. That night, while reviewing more logs at home, I noticed something off. A phantom user session, connected to my account, pinging my terminal every few minutes. The ID was untraceable, buried under Kai's root permissions. I closed my laptop, heart pounding. Was he monitoring me? Did he know I'd found something? I stood in the dark of my apartment, watching the city lights flicker through my blinds. And for the first time, I felt fear. Not just anger, not just betrayal, fear. But fear is fuel. If Kai wanted to play dirty, I'd play deeper. I started building what I called Project Ghost, a hidden subroutine that would quietly gather every unauthorized transaction, timestamp, and access record in real time. If he even touched my files again, it would catch him red-handed. For days, I worked in silence. No music, no distractions. just the rhythm of keys and the heartbeat in my ears. Then, one night, while testing the system, my terminal glitched, and a message appeared. Vesper, stop digging. My blood ran cold. It vanished after 3 seconds like it had never existed. But I knew it was him. I wasn't imagining it anymore. This was war. The next morning, I walked into the office like nothing had happened. Kai was already there, laughing with the marketing team, playing the perfect visionary CEO. Everyone adored him. I walked past him, smiled, and said, "Morning, boss." He winked at me. "Morning, partner." Inside, I whispered to myself, "Not for long." Because Project Ghost was live now, and every keystroke, every file, every shady move, it was all being recorded. The trap was set, but I had no idea what Kai would do next. And what he did would almost destroy me. It was the night before the investor pitch. I hadn't slept in over 48 hours. My mind was a blur of code, numbers, and timestamps. The weight of the plan had settled on my shoulders, and now it felt like a second skin. Every decision I made, every line of code I wrote, every conversation I had, it all revolved around one moment: the reveal. I stared at the final version of the presentation. The last slide was my ace in the hole. My breath was shallow. If everything went according to plan, I would expose Kai's embezzlement live in front of the investors. It would be impossible to spin, impossible to deny. My phone buzzed, pulling me out of my thoughts. It was a text from Maya. "Maya, you good?" I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the keys. What was I supposed to say? That I was about to destroy the man I'd once considered my closest friend? The man I'd trusted with everything? Instead, I typed, "Vesper, it's happening tomorrow. We'll be ready." I hit send and leaned back in my chair. The weight of what I was about to do crushed me. There was no going back now. The trap was set. There was no more room for second guessing. But then came the knock at my door. "Vesper," Kai's voice. "Can I come in?" I froze. I hadn't expected him to come now. Not tonight. "Sure," I said, my voice betraying nothing. He entered, wearing that same charming smile, as if nothing had happened. But I knew what he was doing. He was trying to see if I was cracking, trying to catch me off guard. "I just wanted to check in on the pitch," he said casually, walking over to my desk. "You feeling good about it?" "Yeah, I'm ready," I said, pretending like everything was fine, like we hadn't just crossed a line. He sat down across from me, his eyes scanning the room, pretending to be focused, but I could see the flicker of suspicion in his eyes. "Listen," he continued, "I've been thinking about the company's future, and, well, you and we've been through a lot. You're a great partner, Vesper. You've been with this from the beginning." My heart skipped a beat. His words were smooth, but they didn't reach his eyes. I could feel the manipulation in every syllable. The man who had stolen from me, from all of us, was now trying to win me over with sweet talk. "Thanks," I said, my voice colder than I intended. "But we both know where we stand." For a moment, there was silence. I could feel the tension building between us like a storm on the horizon. Then he leaned forward, his smile widening, and said something that sent a chill straight down my spine. "You know, I've always believed in you, Vesper. But sometimes I think you don't believe in yourself. Maybe you're not cut out for this. Maybe that's why things went sideways." It took everything in me not to lash out. The audacity. The nerve. "Don't try to guilt-trip me, Kai," I said, standing up from my desk. "You're the one who messed this up, not me." His smile faltered for just a second, but he quickly recovered. "Vesper, don't be ridiculous. You know this is about the bigger picture. We have investors who need to see results. This isn't personal." I was ready to scream. Every word he spoke was a lie, a mask for the truth I was about to expose. But I held it in. I had to, because the game wasn't over yet. "I'm not going to let you manipulate me anymore," I said firmly. "The truth is coming, Kai, whether you like it or not." He stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "You think you can just walk in tomorrow and take control? You think they'll believe you over me? For a moment, I almost thought he was going to lunge at me, but instead, he just sneered and turned to leave. You'll regret this, Vesper, he said over his shoulder. I'll make sure of it. As the door slammed shut behind him, I felt a strange calm settle over me. I had been right. He knew. He had sensed it. But now I was sure. There was no more room for doubt. The trap was already set. The next day, the tension was unbearable. I walked into the conference room, the glass doors reflecting my tense expression. Investors were already gathered, chatting among themselves, completely unaware of the storm that was about to hit. Kai was there, of course, his usual confident self, speaking to investors with ease, as though the company wasn't teetering on the brink of collapse. I took my seat across from him. We exchanged a quick glance, and for just a split second, I saw something flicker behind his eyes. Fear. He knew what was coming. The presentation began. I kept my eyes locked on the investors, my heart pounding in my chest. Kai was doing his usual charm, outlining the grand vision of Etherlink 2.0, talking about the potential, the future. Then it was my turn. I stood up, cleared my throat, and clicked to the final slide of the presentation. I had expected Kai to panic. He didn't. Not yet. I hit a key on my laptop, and the screen changed. The financial records, the ones he thought were hidden, appeared on the projector. Every transaction, every forged signature, every stolen dollar. They were all there, in front of everyone. A silence spread across the room. Kai's eyes went wide. His face went pale. I could hear the investors murmuring, but all I could focus on was the shock on his face. What is this? He stammered. I didn't answer him. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. A moment later, one of the investors stood up, visibly shaking. This is criminal. Kai tried to recover, tried to spin it, but his words were drowned out by the rising chorus of voices. He was done. The truth had come out, and there was no hiding it now. But just when I thought it was over, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A text from Maya flashing on my phone. Maya. Vesper. It's not just Kai. I stared at Maya's message, my heart pounding in my chest. Not just Kai? What the hell did she mean by that? For a split second, my mind went blank. Was I wrong about everything? Had I been so focused on Kai that I missed something bigger? I quickly typed back, Vesper, what are you talking about? The dots blinked, then disappeared. No reply. I stood there paralyzed. Everything I thought I knew was suddenly in question. The investors were still murmuring, some on their phones, some staring at Kai. He was a mess. Pale, sweating, trying to regain control, but his voice was shaking. I could see it in his eyes. This was it. His empire was crumbling, and he knew it. But was it just him? I couldn't get Maya's message out of my head. She was in on everything. She had to be. She was one of the first hires at Etherlink, an old college friend of mine who had always played it cool and had my back. But now, she was the one warning me that it wasn't just Kai pulling the strings. I had to talk to her. I had to understand what the hell was going on. I turned away from the chaos unfolding in the conference room. The board members were arguing with each other, some wanting to call the cops, others trying to salvage the deal. Kai was done, but the question was, who else was involved? I pulled out my phone and shot Maya a message. Vesper, meet me at the office, now. I didn't wait for her to reply. I grabbed my bag and headed out. The office was empty when I got there, and the lights flickered in the silence. Maya wasn't there yet, but I needed to prepare. I pulled up the back end of our company's server, looking for anything unusual, anything that might explain her cryptic message. Then it hit me. The logs. I hadn't looked at the server logs in a while. There were too many lines to sift through, but I knew I had to look carefully. My eyes scanned the logs, jumping from entry to entry until I found a pattern. Unauthorized access. Not just from Kai's account, but from Maya's as well. She had been logging in and out of the system at odd hours, far beyond the times when she was supposed to be working. Suddenly, it all made sense. Maya hadn't just been warning me, she was a part of it. She had been siphoning money from the company too, covering her tracks while pretending to be my ally. I felt sick. Betrayal stung more when it came from someone you trusted without question. Someone who had been by your side, not just in business, but in life. I heard the door open and Maya stepped into the room, her face tight with tension. She wasn't surprised to see me already at the computer. She knew what I had found. She had to. "Vess," she said softly, trying to keep her voice steady. "I know what you're thinking." I stood up and turned to face her. "Do you?" "Because right now, I'm thinking I've been played." "By you." She flinched, but then she steadied herself. "You don't know everything. It wasn't just Kai. There's more. I had to protect myself." "Protect yourself?" I laughed bitterly. "By stealing from the company? By setting me up to take the fall?" She shook her head, her eyes filled with something I couldn't quite place. Guilt? Maybe, but also fear. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this, Vesper. I didn't want it to get this far. But when you started making those big moves, I realized I couldn't just sit back and let you take all the credit. I had to make sure I'd come out on top." Her words hit me like a slap across the face. All these years I had trusted her, and she had been planning this betrayal the whole time. "You don't understand," Maya continued, her voice trembling. "This is bigger than just money. This is about survival. I'm not the only one. There are other people, powerful people, who will make sure I'm protected if this all falls apart." My mind reeled. What was she talking about? Powerful people? Who else was involved? I felt like the walls were closing in. Was there a network I didn't know about? "Who, Maya?" I demanded. "Who else?" She hesitated, glancing around the room like she was looking for an escape. "I can't tell you, but you need to stop this. It's too late for you to back out now. You'll destroy everything." I shook my head, my mind racing. There was no going back now. "It's too late for you to stop me. I already exposed Kai, and now I'm going to expose you." Her eyes darkened, and for the first time, I saw the real fear in her. "Vesper, please. I didn't want this. I didn't want you to get hurt." I stepped closer, locking eyes with her. "It's too late to play the victim, Maya. You made your choice. Now, I'm making mine." I turned and walked toward the door, my heart pounding. As I reached for the handle, I heard her call out one last time. "Vesper, think about it. You don't know what you're getting into." But I didn't stop. I couldn't. I had come too far. I had to finish this. The next few days were a blur. After Maya's cryptic warning, I couldn't focus. I had exposed Kai, but now I had to deal with the aftermath. The company was in free fall. Investors pulling back. Contracts being canceled. My phone was blowing up with messages and calls from every direction, but the only thing that kept running through my mind was Maya's words. "You don't know what you're getting into." I couldn't shake the feeling that I had missed something, that I had stirred up something much bigger than I realized. My entire world had been built on the company, on the idea that we were changing the future of virtual reality. But now I was starting to question everything. The night before, I barely slept. I spent hours going over every document, every transaction, every conversation I'd had with Maya. I had to make sure I hadn't missed anything, any clue that would reveal the full scope of what had been going on. I thought back to the early days of Etherlink. Maya and I had worked side by side, pouring every ounce of energy into building something from the ground up. It had been our dream. Or at least, that's what I had believed. I felt a pang of regret. Maybe I should have seen it coming. Maybe Maya had been hiding her true intentions the whole time. But I couldn't afford to dwell on that. I needed to focus. I sat in my office the next day, surrounded by reports and data, when my phone rang again. It was an unknown number. I hesitated for a moment, but answered anyway. "Vesper," a voice said, low and controlled. You've been asking the wrong questions. My heart skipped a beat. It was a voice I didn't recognize, but it sounded strangely familiar. I didn't answer, waiting for the next words. You think Maya is the problem? The voice continued. But she's just a pawn. You've been played by someone much bigger than you realize. I stood up, my pulse racing. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. What did this person mean? Who else was behind this? Maya didn't act alone, the voice added. She was just a piece of a much larger game. There are people in your life, Vesper. People you trust, who have been pulling strings behind the scenes. And it's time for you to see the truth. The line went dead. I dropped the phone, my mind spinning. What the hell was going on? Who else was involved? The list of people I thought I could trust was shrinking fast. I had to confront Maya again. But I wasn't going to be careful anymore. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me again. If there was something bigger at play here, I needed to know what it was, and I needed to end it before it destroyed everything I had worked for. That afternoon, I made my way to the office, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. I needed answers. And this time, I wasn't going to leave until I had them. When I walked into the office, Maya was there, sitting at her desk, her face unreadable. She didn't look surprised to see me. Vesper, she said quietly, not meeting my eyes. You don't have to do this. I didn't say anything at first. I was too angry, too confused. But then, I couldn't hold it in any longer. Maya, I need the truth, I said, my voice low but firm. I need to know who's behind all of this. Who else is involved? I'm done with the games. She finally looked up at me, her expression hard. You think you're the only one who's been betrayed? You think this is just about money, Vesper? You don't know the half of it. Her words caught me off guard. What do you mean? Who's pulling the strings? Her eyes flickered, and for a brief moment I saw a flash of fear. But it was gone just as quickly, replaced by a look of resolve. It's bigger than Kai, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. There's a whole network of people, powerful people. They've been pulling the strings from the beginning. They're the ones who made all of this happen. Kai was just their puppet. And I was too. I felt my stomach drop. This was more than I had ever expected. More than I could have ever imagined. Who are they, Maya? I demanded. Who's behind this? But Maya didn't answer. She just stood up, her hands trembling. You need to stop, Vesper, she said, her voice breaking. You don't understand what you're getting into. If you keep going, you'll bring down everything. You'll bring down yourself. Her words sent a chill through me. What was she trying to warn me about? What was so dangerous about finding out the truth? I took a step forward. I don't care what happens to me. I need to know everything. Maya shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. You won't survive this. No one will. She turned and walked out of the office, leaving me standing there, more confused and lost than ever. Was she warning me out of guilt? Or was she trying to protect me from something even worse? The sense of danger had shifted from a corporate betrayal to something darker, something more sinister. But I couldn't stop now. Not when I was so close. The truth was out there, and I wasn't going to back down. I had never felt more alone. Maya's words echoed in my mind like a haunting refrain. You won't survive this. No one will. Each time I tried to focus, her warning slipped into my thoughts, a constant reminder of the danger I was facing. My phone buzzed with messages from the board members, investors, even old colleagues. But I couldn't bring myself to answer any of them. Not now. Not until I knew the truth. I had been going in circles, trying to piece together the web of lies. Maya was a part of it, yes, but there were others involved. She wasn't the mastermind. She was just another pawn in a game much larger than either of us could have imagined. The more I thought about it, the clearer it became. I needed to dig deeper. But the deeper I went, the more I realized that there were people in this company, in this world, with resources and power far beyond anything I had ever encountered. and they were playing a game I wasn't prepared for. I had to confront the people who were pulling the strings. I couldn't do this alone anymore. I needed help. My first thought was to reach out to someone who had always been in my corner, someone I could trust. That person was Jonathan Hawk, a cybersecurity expert who had been with Etherlink from the very beginning. Jonathan was brilliant, but he was also the kind of guy who liked to stay in the background, out of the spotlight. He had never been interested in the limelight. He just wanted to do his job and make sure things worked smoothly. But he wasn't just a tech guy. Jonathan had connections. And more importantly, he knew how to handle the kind of people I was up against. I called him that night, hoping he'd pick up. The phone rang 3 times before he answered, his voice raspy from what I assumed was lack of sleep. "Oh, Vesper." His tone was cautious, but I could hear the concern in his voice. "What's going on? I've been hearing rumors about what happened with Kai." I hesitated, trying to gather my thoughts. I had never wanted to drag Jonathan into this mess, but it was too late to back out now. "I need your help, Jonathan. There's more going on than you know. And it's bigger than Kai. It's bigger than anything I've ever imagined." There was silence on the other end. Then Jonathan spoke, his voice more serious than I had ever heard it. "I knew it," he said. "I knew there was something wrong. I've been looking into things, Vesper. I've seen the traces, the unauthorized access, the patterns. Whoever is behind this has been covering their tracks for years. And I've got a feeling it's not just a couple of bad actors. This goes all the way to the top." My heart dropped. "All the way to the top? What do you mean?" "I mean, this isn't just about a few bad deals or a rogue employee," Jonathan said, his voice low. "This is organized. The people who've been pulling the strings know exactly what they're doing, and they've got resources, legal, financial, political. They're not just going to let you take them down without a fight." My pulse quickened. This was getting bigger by the second. "I can't do this alone," I said, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on me. "I need your help. I need your skills, Jonathan. I need you to track down the people who've been behind this. They have to be stopped. Now." There was a pause on the other end of the line before Jonathan finally spoke again. "Okay, I'll help. But you need to be careful, Vesper. These people won't go down easily. You're dealing with powerful enemies, and they'll do whatever it takes to protect themselves." I took a deep breath. "I know, but I don't care anymore. I need to finish this." Jonathan agreed to help me, and the next few days were a blur of frantic meetings, late-night phone calls, and endless digging into the company's records. Jonathan worked tirelessly, tracing back every shady deal, every hidden transaction. The deeper we dug, the more we uncovered. This wasn't just about stolen funds. It was a carefully orchestrated plan to sabotage Etherlink, to ruin everything I had built. We uncovered connections to international investors, shell companies, and even ties to a few high-ranking politicians. The game had been rigged from the start, and Kai and Maya were just pawns in a much larger scheme. But there was one name that kept coming up in the shadows, a name I hadn't expected: Reed Holloway. Reed was a venture capitalist, a name that everyone in Silicon Valley knew. He had funded Etherlink in its early days, but I had always assumed that he had moved on to other projects after that. What I hadn't known was that Reed had been secretly pulling the strings behind the scenes, manipulating everything from the shadows. Reed Holloway had been the one to make sure Maya and Kai were in position. He had set the entire thing up. I couldn't believe it. All this time, Reed had been playing me. I knew then that it was time to go after him. It wasn't just about taking down Kai anymore. It was about taking down the puppet master. I made a decision. I was going to expose Reed. I was going to take him down in front of everyone, the investors, the board, the media. I wasn't going to stop until I had reclaimed everything he had stolen from me. The moment I said Reed's name out loud, it felt like the air in the room changed. Jonathan went silent on the other end of the line. Even through the static, I could feel the tension. "Vesper," he finally said, his voice low, steady. If Reed Holloway's involved, this isn't just corporate sabotage. You're dealing with someone who has government contracts, offshore holdings, and legal shields made of titanium. You can't go after him the usual way. I don't care, I said, standing up from my chair, pacing across the apartment. He played me, Jonathan. He used me. Everything I built, my company, my name. He turned it into his playground. I won't let him win. Jonathan sighed heavily. Then you'll need to outsmart him, not outfight him. That was easier said than done. Reed was untouchable in Silicon Valley. He had the charm of a visionary and the ruthlessness of a shark. He was the kind of man who smiled for magazine covers while quietly crushing startups behind closed doors. I had once admired him. Now I saw the predator underneath the polished exterior. For the next few days I watched him, not directly, but digitally. Jonathan and I tracked his network activity, his meetings, his calendar. Reed was preparing for something big, a new funding announcement that would make him even more powerful. That was going to be my opening. I needed to expose him, publicly. Quiet revenge wouldn't work on someone like Reed. His power came from perception, from how people saw him. If I could break that illusion, I could destroy everything he built. But to do that, I needed proof. Hard evidence that tied him directly to the embezzlement and manipulation at Etherlink. Jonathan called me 2 nights later. I found something, he said. Reed's been funneling money through dummy accounts, same as Kai, but on a much larger scale. Billions, Vesper. Not just from your company, but from others too. Startups that mysteriously went bankrupt. Projects that never launched. He's been siphoning off their funding for years. My stomach dropped. Can you trace it? I already did, Jonathan said, a note of pride in his voice. I've been building a digital trail that shows exactly how the money moves, right into one of his offshore shells in the Caymans. But it's encrypted. We'll need physical access to his primary server to prove it's his system. Where? His private office, Jonathan replied. Downtown Palo Alto. But there's a catch. It's secured with biometric locks, cameras, and remote surveillance. You'd have to go in yourself. The thought of breaking into Reed Holloway's office felt insane, but strangely, thrilling. For the first time in weeks, I felt alive. The night of the break-in, I dressed in black. Hoodie, gloves, no jewelry. Jonathan guided me remotely from his end, watching the building's live feed through an exploit he had planted days before. Okay, he said in my earpiece. You've got 2 guards patrolling every 15 minutes. You have exactly 7 minutes between their rounds. The back door opens with the access code I sent you. I took a deep breath and stepped into the alley behind Reed's building. My pulse pounded in my ears. Every sound, the distant hum of traffic, the buzz of a street lamp, felt amplified. I typed in the code. The lock clicked open. Inside, everything was quiet. Too quiet. The office smelled faintly of cedar and expensive cologne. The air was cold, sterile, mechanical. I crept through the glass corridor, the soft glow of city lights reflecting off every polished surface. There it was. His private server room. A sleek black cabinet locked behind reinforced glass. Jonathan, I whispered. I see it. Good. The USB drive I gave you will automatically download the encrypted files. Just plug it into the top port. But once you do, you'll have 5 minutes before the system triggers a silent alarm. I exhaled sharply. Got it. My hands shook slightly as I inserted the drive. The screen lit up with streams of data, lines of code flying past like a waterfall of secrets. Then I saw it. File names labeled Project Etherlink Reallocation and Asset Liquidation Plan. He had documented everything. Every transaction, every bribe, every lie. Jonathan's voice cut through the static. You got it, Vess? Yes, I whispered. He's finished. That's when I heard it. The faint sound of footsteps. Someone else was in the building. Jonathan, I breathed, freezing in place. Someone's here. The footsteps got louder, closer. I ducked behind a pillar just as the door to the hallway opened. And there he was, Reed Holloway. Calm, composed, and terrifyingly confident. He didn't look surprised. He looked expectant. "Vesper," he said softly, his voice like silk over steel. "I was wondering when you'd come. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same scene. Rowan's smug smile, the investors' doubtful faces, and the faint flicker of disbelief in the eyes of my own team. I'd worked so hard to build Neurodream, our VR startup, and now it felt like my life's work was slipping through my fingers because of one man's greed. But not anymore. I stared at my laptop screen as lines of code and spreadsheets glowed against the dark. I wasn't coding this time. I was tracking. Every dollar, every hidden transaction, every offshore movement Rowan had made since the embezzlement began. He thought he was clever. He thought no one would ever notice. He didn't know who he was dealing with. Around 3 a.m., I got a message from Ilara. "Ilara, I just saw the meeting announcement. Rowan's pitching to investors again tomorrow. Are you ready?" Me. More than ready. I attached a zip file named mirrorproject.zip and sent it to her. It wasn't a virus. It was a reflection of truth. Inside that file were every falsified transaction, every manipulated account record, and even the email threads Rowan had deleted. How did I get them? Well, Rowan had taught me one thing: never underestimate access. Before he locked me out of the main financial system, I'd mirrored everything to a private server, just in case. He thought he was erasing my tracks. In reality, he was building his own digital noose. The next day, the morning sun felt cruelly bright. I arrived at Neurodream's glass building, heart hammering. Everyone greeted Rowan like nothing happened. He was wearing that same confident grin, as if the world bent to his will. "Vesper," he said smoothly, clapping my shoulder. "I'm glad you decided to show up today. It's good optics." Optics. That word made my stomach twist. I forced a smile. Wouldn't miss it for the world. As the presentation began, he stood in front of the screen, showing flashy slides of the company's growth, the breakthroughs, the vision. But I could see the cracks. Everything he said, every statistic, was built on falsified data. I waited, watched, breathed. And then, when he clicked to the final slide, the one about future financial projections, I stood up. "Rowan," I said, my voice steady. "Before you go on, I think the investors deserve to see something real." He blinked. "Vesper, this isn't the time." I connected my laptop to the main screen. The projector flickered. Then my file name appeared, Mirror Project. The room went silent. At first, no one understood what they were seeing, just a cascade of spreadsheets and screenshots. But then, one by one, the pieces came together. Emails showing Rowan transferring funds to a dummy company, fake receipts, bank logs, everything. Rowan's face drained of color. "This is insane. She's lying." I met his eyes. "Really? Because this lie came straight from your server. You might have deleted it, but I learned from the best." The investors whispered among themselves. One of them, a woman named Ms. Carver, leaned forward and said sharply, "Rowan, is this true?" Rowan's jaw tightened. "No, of course not." Then my phone pinged. I turned the screen toward them. A live notification popped up. Subject: Confirmation of funds. Rowan Technologies Holdings Limited. It was from the bank. A timed release. The final proof. The room exploded in murmurs. Rowan lunged toward me. "You set me up!" I didn't move. "No, Rowan. You set yourself up." I just hit send. The security team stepped in before he could say another word. As they escorted him out, his voice echoed down the hall, half fury, half disbelief. "You'll regret this, Vesper." I exhaled, trembling, every ounce of rage and grief dissolving into a strange, sharp relief. But deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. This was only part one of reclaiming my life. When Rowan was taken away, the silence that followed was deafening. I stood there, my heart still racing, the cold sweat on my palms mixing with the warmth of victory. But as the investors turned their gaze toward me, I realized this was only the beginning of another fight. Vesper, Ms. Carver said sharply, we'll need to review the documents in detail. If what you've shown is real, we have a lot to clean up. Her voice wasn't angry, it was measured. But I could tell she was assessing me, calculating whether I was the savior or just another liability. I'll cooperate fully, I replied, steadying my voice. Everything I've shown today is verifiable. I just want Neurodream to survive. That word, survive, hung in the air like a warning. Hours later, I sat alone in my apartment. The city lights blinked through the blinds like tiny judgmental eyes. The adrenaline was gone, replaced by exhaustion and a dull ache of disbelief. I had exposed Rowan, yes, but the company's reputation was bleeding. Investors would demand audits, the board might suspend operations, and the media, well, they would devour the story. I opened my laptop again and watched the cursor blink in an empty document. For months, Neurodream had been my heartbeat. Now, I didn't know if it would live to see another day. My phone buzzed. It was Ilara. Ilara, you okay? Me. I should be, but I'm not. Ilara, you did the right thing. Rowan was poison. The company will be fine. I stared at her words. I wanted to believe them, but something inside whispered, Rowan's not finished. I'd seen the look in his eyes as they dragged him away, pure, burning hatred. And men like Rowan didn't go quietly. 2 days later, it began. The press leaked a story. Ex-CTO of Neurodream accused of corporate espionage. That was me. They twisted the narrative, painting me as the mastermind who framed Rowan to take control of the company. Anonymous sources claimed I had tampered with financial records and sabotaged internal systems. My phone exploded with messages, some of them supportive. Most weren't. Traitor. Greedy snake. Can't handle success without stepping on others. The internet had decided I was the villain. Ilara stormed into my apartment that night, laptop in hand. They're saying you planted fake evidence, Vess. This is getting out of hand. I felt numb. I knew he'd try something, but this fast? Ilara set her laptop down. Look, he's out on bail, and he's spinning the narrative before the board meeting tomorrow. I clenched my fists. He's desperate. She looked at me, fear flickering in her eyes. Desperate men are dangerous. That night, I didn't sleep again. Instead, I logged into the secure server, the one Rowan didn't know existed. I began reviewing every trace of his digital activity, every shadow file, every backup he might have forgotten. Hours passed. Then I found it. A folder labeled Aurora Prototype buried deep under layers of encrypted directories. Inside were transaction records, not just for Neurodream, but for 3 other shell companies he owned. He hadn't just stolen from me, he'd stolen from everyone. And that was my proof. But I knew I couldn't just walk into the next board meeting with evidence. Rowan was already ahead, using PR, influence, and charm to rewrite the story. If I wanted to take him down for good, I needed something undeniable, something public, something that couldn't be twisted. Then it hit me. The Global VR Showcase next week. It was streamed live to millions, featuring emerging tech leaders, including Neurodream. Rowan had planned to present our next-gen VR platform there, but with him suspended, the slot was open. And I was still the CTO. I leaned back, heart pounding with a mix of fear and determination. If Rowan wanted to play this publicly, then public it would be. Next week, I'd expose everything, not just to investors or lawyers, but to the entire world. And this time, he wouldn't have a single place to hide. The conference room was silent, except for the soft hum of servers behind the glass wall. The same investors who once stared at me with skepticism now leaned forward, hanging on my every word. I looked at them, then at Lucas, pale, jaw tight, eyes flicking nervously toward the exit. Before I continue the pitch, I said, I think you all deserve to know the truth about where your money went. Gasps, whispers. Lucas tried to cut me off. Vesper, this isn't the... Sit down, I said, my voice calm but sharp enough to slice steel. You've done enough. I clicked the remote. The screen behind me lit up with a series of digital receipts, offshore accounts, and hidden transactions, all traced back to Lucas's personal crypto wallet. The investors were silent at first, then chaos erupted. Are these real? Lucas, what the hell is this? You said she was the one. Lucas stood up, hands trembling. This is fake. She's manipulating the data. But I was ready. I clicked again. A recorded Zoom call appeared. One I had saved weeks ago, between Lucas and our former accountant. His voice was clear. Just make it look like Vesper authorized the transfers. She never checks the back-end logs anyway. The room froze. I turned back to the investors. I trusted him. I built this company from nothing. While I was sleeping on a couch trying to keep us afloat, he was stealing from us all. Silence hung heavy. Then one of the investors stood. Vesper, I believe you. You're the CEO we should have had from the start. It was the first time in months that I felt air in my lungs again. Lucas was escorted out. He didn't look back. That night, I sat in the empty office. The city lights reflected off the glass walls, and the hum of the servers now felt peaceful. We'd survived. I'd survived. A message popped up on my screen. It was from Lucas. A single line. You think this is over? I smiled to myself. No, Lucas. It's just beginning. But this time, I'm the one writing the code. 3 months later, Eidolon, the company, was reborn. I rebranded it, hired a new team, and rebuilt everything from the ground up. Investors came back. Media called it the most remarkable comeback in Silicon Valley. But for me, it wasn't about the comeback. It was about control, taking back what was stolen piece by piece. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying someone. It's about showing them that you can rebuild, better, stronger, and untouchable. And as I looked at the glowing skyline of Silicon Valley, I whispered to myself, "Game over, Lucas. Simulation complete."